To all of you, welcome. This is the 30th webinar in this very ambitious series of presentations that we've been running. We'll do one more, that'll be next Sunday, and we'll deal with Hungary. Thereafter, we'll take a pause and begin again in 2022. Today's talk by David Patterson promises to be particularly interesting. Professor Patterson teaches at the University of Texas, Dallas. He's a prolific author. Many of his books have won distinguished prizes. One of the things that distinguishes his work and makes it especially captivating is that he crosses the disciplines of history, philosophy, and theology. And as you'll hear from his presentation in just a moment, some of his, a sizable part, in fact, of his interest in understanding anti-Semitism is to locate what he calls its mythological roots, which then tie into ideological programs. Put those two together, we have a very dangerous combination. A recent book of his is called Shoah and Torah. Another book will be forthcoming. I think he'll show you the cover before long. He's always worth listening to, always worth reading. I learned from him, I'm sure you will as well. Following his talk, as Günther said, we'll have an opportunity to engage him in discussion. David, without any further ado, it's my pleasure and honor to welcome you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Alvin. I managed to find the cover of a forthcoming book that I have on, it's called Judaism, Anti-Semitism, and Holocaust. Are you able to see it?
Yes.
Yes. That'll be coming out through Cambridge University Press at the end of April. So that's the next the next project, the next work that I have coming. This, yeah, okay. And we can see this screen?
Yes, that looks fine, yes.
Okay, good, thank you. Before I get into my the slides, I want to say a couple of words about the terms mythical and political and what this means, at least in the way I'm using it. By mythical, I'm referring to ways in which we give utterance to the ineffable, to what surpasses utterance. It's about, the mythical is about what is most fundamental in our lives, what is most meaningful. It's about what precedes every origin and determines every outcome. Through the mythical, we try to understand, for example, good and evil, truth and lie, what is holy, what is unholy, everything that brings to the soul or to society either redemption or ruin. By political, I refer to the acquisition and exercise of the power that is necessary to realize the truth, secure what is holy, and assure our redemption, however we might understand redemption, salvation, either in theological terms or ideological utopian terms, you know, however that might play out. And because the mythical is about what is ultimate and absolute, everything that determines life and death, damnation, salvation even, the political power that it brings to bear almost always entails spilling blood. There will be blood, as the title of the movie says. So, what about the Jews? Who are the Jews? What is the anti-Semite anti? And I'll go to my first slide. These are Jews. These are some Jews, okay? If you look at these Jews, here's some more Jews. What race are these people? What race are they? They're all races, right? In other words, anti-Semitism, in my view, is not about racism. Anti-Semitism is not a form of racism. In fact, I would argue that racism is a form of anti-Semitism. Why? Because anti-Semitism is grounded not just in a way of viewing the Jew, but in a way of understanding the value of the other human being. In other words, it fundamentally opposes the original Jewish teachings about what makes a human being holy, created in the image and likeness of the Holy One, all human beings being tied to each other as children of Adam. The Hebrew word for human being is Ben Adam, a child of Adam. So each of us is connected. The category of race is not even viable here. So in order to arrive at a racist outlook, you have to at least take this anti-Judaic, if not anti-Semitic, position. And because everything is at stake in this, how we understand the value of a human being goes to how we understand value, good and evil, truth and lie, and so on, meaning and meaninglessness. And so the Jew shifts into a mythical category, a metaphysical category, and you have this image of the Jew. Nobody has ever seen anyone that looks like this. Right. The mythical is about the invisible. The Jew it's not that the Jew is evil, it's that evil is Jewish. It's not that all Jews are evil, but all evil is Jewish. And any salvation, however we understand salvation, spiritually, socially, politically, ideologically, depends on purging and purifying the world of the eternal Jew, of the evil. Now, anti-Semitism or anti-Judaism, contempt for Jews and so on did not begin with the advent of Christianity. And we find examples of cultural or ethnic anti-Jewishness, anti-Semitism. I'll use the word anti-Semitism to just refer to the phenomenon in general. The cultural precedes the mythical. The Greek philosopher Democritus, for example, uttered the first blood libel. He claimed that the Israelites go out on the roads and kidnap travelers and take them into the temple and slaughter them. The Egyptian priest Manetho, the Roman historian Tacitus, had contempt for the Jews as an ethnic group, as a culture, as a group whose customs were strange and pernicious and so on. But the Jew was not part of any theological structure here until the advent of Christianity. Okay, so part of not only introducing but controlling the mythical categories, and by mythical I don't mean false, I mean the categories of how we think about the life of the soul, the ineffable. Part of appropriating those categories entails an appropriation of the word. And already by the end of the first century, and you see the dates for St. Ignatius of Antioch, he died in 108, just as the Gospels were started to be written, right? This is really before Christianity takes on its own definition. However, this teaching from St. Ignatius do not observe the Jewish commandments, the mitzvot. Mitzvot are connections. The word mitzvah or commandment has as its root savta, which is a connection. Don't pursue the connections that you find in the Torah, in the Jewish word, because there's a new dispensation. So this anticipates the introduction of a new mythical structure. Scripture, in whatever tradition it is, scripture is about myth. It's about the ultimate. It's about the life of the soul. It's about what precedes all of our understanding of the world. And so there's a new myth introduced. There's a supersession of the old covenant, the old truth, and you'll note the book in these images of the early church fathers. There's always a book. There's always a book. Okay, the book, the word, is essential to the myth and the meaning, and how we understand sanctity in life, and how we understand ways in which the Jew threatens that. So as we go into go further into the early centuries of Christianity, again, there's a book to be found in all of these images with Tertullian, Justin Martyr, Origen, Cyprian. You find the articulation of the teaching of contempt, certainly beginning with Tertullian, so that it becomes not just a prejudice, the contempt for the Jew, but it becomes part of being righteous. It anticipates a contempt for the Jew as a religious duty, as an evil. And this is where the deicide myth, the Jew as the God killer, kicks in. And this is, in order to be a God killer, you have to take on a mythical status, something other than human. The Jew, it can be the devil incarnate, but once the Jew is labeled deicide, once the Jew is demonized, the Jew is no longer in a human category. Now, in the early centuries of Christianity, there are many arguments among the Christian thinkers vis-a-vis, the correct belief. What does Christianity mean? What does the Christ mean? Who are the Jews? Where are the Jews? But this connection to political dimensions doesn't really happen until Christianity is tolerated, legalized, one of the tolerated religions under Constantine, who convened the Council of Nicaea. This is where power comes into play. Okay, the Council of Nicaea was about identifying heresies. Once you identify false belief, then you seek out the means of enforcing the mythical structure to root out false belief. These are some of the heresies identified at the Council of Nicaea. Is Jesus divine or not? Is he all human? Is he all divine? Is he both? Is he? It has a lot to do with the divinity and the humanity of Jesus, and Marcionism. The Marcion heresy was one that would have rejected the Hebrew scriptures as part of the mythical structure of the new dispensation. But it was determined, of course, that the Christians need the Hebrew scriptures in order to demonstrate that Jesus is indeed the one invoked by the prophets. Another huge step in the merging of myth and politics came under the Emperor Theodosius I toward the end of the 4th century, when Christianity became the official religion of Rome. So the political power structure goes to, among other things, goes to enforce the theological structure. And within the theological structure, the Jew has a certain significance, namely God killer, deicide, devil. So here in this image of St. Jerome, you know St. Jerome as the translator of the scriptures into Latin. He produced, here he is not only holding a book, but writing a book. Okay. This appropriation of the holy word, of the mythical word, brings with it a structure in which the Jew is demonized. As I said, it's not that all Jews are evil, but all evil is Jewish, so that redemption, purity, salvation rests upon the eradication of evil, therefore the eradication of the Jew. Okay, so again, the contempt for the Jew becomes something holy and pleasing to God. The Jews fight against God. St. John Chrysostom, a famous orator, saying that the devil leads them in their revels and their rites. They are evil. They are aligned with Satan. The Jew takes on this mythical image of the Jew as a devil worshiper, is incorporated into the political category. There was a major move in this regard with the Code of Justinian, which further restricted under the law the Jewish life, Jewish activity, the Jewish livelihood, criminalizing the Jew, delegitimizing the Jews, and Judaism. And so here the authority of the church and the state, or the church, the mitre and the crown, as I call it, converges more and more and more. And this will spell trouble for the Jews. With the advent of Islam, we also see the Jew situated in yet another mythical structure. Okay, you see once again the book. Muhammad is holding the book in the second surah of the Quran. We read these words: "This is the book. This is the word. This is the mythical structure. This is the ultimate. This is the truth." And among those truths is that the Jews are those whom Allah has cast aside and to whom his wrath has fallen, of whom he has made some as apes and swine. The Quran says that the Jews are falsifiers of the word. Okay, this is the true word. They're as falsifiers of the word. They're falsifying not just information, they're falsifying the source of salvation. Okay, so the Jew poses a threat to the life of the soul, and as you know, if from the history of Islam, certainly the early centuries is a bloody history. There were three tribes in the time of Muhammad living in the vicinity of Medina, what was called Yathrib, and the Banu Qurayza, Banu Kainuka, Banu Nadir were the three tribes. The Banu Qurayza were slaughtered. The men of the Banu Qurayza were all killed, and the other two were expelled. This expulsion is required to attain, again, purity and redemption as determined by the mythical structures here. In many instances in the history of Islam, you have this very close tie between the theological structure and the political structure. The truth is determined by the mythical categories and how you enforce the truth. The Pact of Umar is an important turn here in the coming together of myth and politics, and the determination of the Jew and others having the dhimmi status under the law, that is protected status. Here too, once myth and politics come together, you have a series of, spilling of blood. The more indistinguishable the crown and the mitre are, or the crown and the religious authority, the more likely you'll have things like the infamous Granada massacre of 1066 in Spain. Why this spilling of blood? Because it's a blood that corrupts us. The soul is in the blood. The soul of the Jew is pernicious, and the soul corrupts the body of believers. So you have this purification campaign undertaken by Ibn Tumart of Morocco, followed by the Almohad persecutions. But you'll notice that where you have anti-Semitism, you have an interest in purity and purification. Beware of purity movements, and movements that want to purify one's soul, one's belief, one's political structure. Holy war is about purification. It's a war for the sake of redemption. There's no redemption without this purification. So this famous line, "You'll come and let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel shall be no more in remembrance." This may remind you of remarks later by Elie Wiesel and Primo Levi that the Holocaust was a war against memory. It's not just the presence of the Jew, it's the memory of the Jew, of what the Jew represents in terms of the teaching and tradition over the millennia. That has to be no more in remembrance. And this is the area of the Almohad persecutions. I mentioned it's a purification movement. Not an accident, I think, that it takes place during the Crusades, the centuries of the Crusades. With the advent of the Crusades, you have the first widespread and very bloody violence against the Jews. And again, this purification of the Jews is a requisite for redemption. In 1096, with the launching of the First Crusade and the murder of the Jews in the Rhineland, and there would be other waves of mass murder of the Jews for the next 160, 170 years over the Crusades, there were priests who taught that anyone who kills a Jew will have his sins forgiven, because killing a Jew is killing Satan. Killing a Jew is killing evil. Which is necessary to having your sins forgiven. I should be quick to point out that the people in the higher echelons of the ecclesiastical structure said, no, to the priests who was teaching this, no, that's not how you attain salvation. But it's in the popular culture, it's in the Christian culture. It's at this time that blood comes to bear, the spilling of blood, the outcry of blood. Blood itself becomes a mythical category. Blood, the soul is in the blood. Okay. Life is in the blood. And the blood of Jesus calls out for what? Calls out for revenge, calls out for justice, calls out for the elimination of the Jews. Also at this time, 13th century, this is the 1242, the Crusaders are still, have a presence in the Holy Land. Here you have the myth, what I call myth opposing myth. Which word is the word of truth? Which word has to be purged? And it's the word of lies, the word that corrupts. The myth that leads to our ruin has to be purged by fire. I mean, fire becomes a recurring image here at this time. and calling to mind Heinrich Heine's prophetic remark later that when you start by burning books, you end by burning people. When the mythical and the political merge, you end by burning people. But you can't. But what you're purging is evil. You have to mythologize the Jew into something not human, into something evil. And here in medieval art, you get the images of Jews as not human. Jesus, who, as we all know, was a Jew, doesn't look anything like the Jews around him. And Jesus is the Son of Man, the Son of God, the Savior, who saves us from these Jews. Saves us from what? From the evil that is the Jew, the evil that threatens our soul. Here you see the emergence in the history of anti-Semitism of a ritualized deicide. In other words, myth finds its expression in ritual of all sorts. And we're all familiar with religious ritual, institutional ritual, political ritual. Okay. So it's at this time that you have, 1144, the blood libel in Norwich, England, subsequent centuries, the emergence of the desecration of the host, whereby Jews would get their hands on the wafers used in the communion ceremony, which is necessary to salvation, right? There's a whole mythical structure behind the ritual of communion. So this is kind of the evil anti-communion undertaken by the Jews. It brings the damnation of those who come under its spell, or those who are around us. And you see in this image, the wafer, which is the body of the Christ, bleeds as the Jews reenact the crucifixion. The Rindfleisch massacres came in the wake of the blood libel myth, which was spread throughout the Germanic lands. 100,000 Jews murdered, burned to death in many cases. So once again, you get the purification by fire. Jews being burned to death during the Black Death, and the plagues of the 14th century that decimated Europe. But where does this death come from? You see, death itself has its own mythical dimension. It's death itself finds its way into rite and ritual and understanding and good and evil, and how we understand that. Death comes through evil. If death comes from the Jew, then evil comes from the Jew. And it has to be purged, whether it's the Black Death or the COVID virus. Once again, at this time, in order to shore up the mythical structures of the theology here that determine who is damned and who is saved, you have the advent of disputations, series of disputations. The Barcelona and Tortosa disputations are among the famous ones. And you see, book versus book. As you can imagine, the disputations were the outcome was predetermined. The mythical threat of damnation and salvation are what is articulated, what is at stake, what is determined by the mythical structure, by the first principles, by the metaphysics, by the fundamental understanding of God, world, and humanity. So to the extent that the Jews are not just bad for society, but threaten the life of the soul, they become more and more identified with Satan. And you see on the devil, the circle on the clothing of the devil, that's a Jew badge. That's a Jew badge. And you see above this the image of the cruciform image of a child. This is an image from a blood libel. You know, the Jews slaughter children and use their blood in their rites and rituals and making matzah and so on. So salvation, the four inquisitions organized by the Catholic Church, the medieval Inquisition, Spanish Inquisition, Portuguese Inquisition, and Roman Inquisition, were all about rooting out heresy for the sake of the salvation of the soul. The heresy of Judaism was the target of Spanish and Portuguese Inquisitions, the heresy of Judaizing. And this, of course, comes not by accident, where you have in Spain, one of the centers up to this, from about the early 11th century to this time, the center of Jewish learning and Jewish life was in Spain, golden age of Spanish Jewry. So you have a number of conversos, Jews who converted to Catholicism in 1492. You recall the expulsion of the Jews of Spain, the Jews had to convert or leave or die. This is for the sake, again, of purification, the limpieza de sangre, purity of the blood. And this anticipates a modern period, an essentialism of the modern period, where blood purity will come into play in race theory and certainly in Nazi ideology. The idea is that the Judaism is in the blood and the blood can't be purified. So the convert is always suspect. As Alfred Rosenberg, Nazi ideologue, says, the Judaism is in the blood. Therefore, every Jew, believer or non-believer, has to be eliminated because they're all carriers of that contagion. And of course, under the Inquisition of Spain, there is this very close tie between crown and mitre, between the church and the crown. Ferdinand and Isabella were 100% behind. In fact, it couldn't have happened without the crown. The coming of Protestantism doesn't make things any better for the Jews. Martin Luther reintroduces the deicide myth. He argues that Jews should be threatened on pain of death, to give up their Torah, abandon their Torah studies. They should be put in labor camps. And you see, the mythical dimension of anti-Semitism at play in his work on the Jews and their lives. And of course, this will play out in other examples of mass murder, Khmelnytsky massacres in 1649, purging the evil from your midst, the Haidamach massacres of the 18th century under Ivan Gonta, who killed 1,000 Jews, is estimated, in the Uman massacre of 1768. I mean, they're religious wars. Political upheavals. Now, this is interesting. The pogroms that come in the 19th and early 20th centuries are tied to political upheaval. The assassination of Alexander II in 1881, for example, which set off, the series of pogroms. The Jews were viewed here not just as a source of a false belief or a superseded covenant or something like that, but they are the source of this new atheism, socialism, communism, Bolshevism that is threatening the fabric of society. So here you have, even when Jew hatred is secularized, it still proves to be quite deadly. The Jew here, with the secularization of the mythical view of the Jew, becomes a threat to human society, human values, moral values, human health. Right? The Jew here is an invisible cosmic threat. This is where you have world Jewish conspiracies kicking in. Similarly, with the modern movements of communism, socialism, Fourier, Marx, Toussaint, Proudhon, these ideologues who rejected the religious tradition promoted nonetheless a kind of utopian redemption for humanity. They had a vision of from each according to his ability to each according to his need. Creating a heaven on earth, and the Jew was seen to be a major obstacle to that, the Jew and Judaism. Here too, in the 19th century, with race theory, you have the idea that you even if the Jew abandons his Judaism, you can't take the Judaism out of the Jew. So here, these are images of the Jews' threat to the world, to humanity, not necessarily to the soul, but to the ideological project, to the folk, to the people. The image on the left is from Nazi propaganda, from Der Stürmer. On the right, you have the cover of an Arabic language edition of the Protocols of the Elders of Zion. This is a new myth that mythologizes the Jew, explains that the evil that the Jew represents is invisible. The Protocols of the Elders of Zion were minutes that were taken in a secret meeting. The Jews are as invisible as Satan. And of course, you can see this cover of a Russian edition. It was initially published in Russia under the guidance of Pyotr Rachkovsky and Sergei Nilus. This image on the cover is a mythical image. It's an image of evil. It's an image of the eternal Jew, the eternal evil with which the Jews threaten humanity. It's not about the damnation of the soul as such. It's about the undermining of everything society holds dear. The Jews, how do the Jews control the world? They control the banks, they control money, they control media, they control politics. The Jew is behind every war. The Zionist movement is about establishing a base of operations. It's not about finding a homeland or a haven for the Jews, so that Israel as a nation is to among the nations what the Jew is in society. Israel is the Jew among the nations, and Israel gets tagged, as you all know, with whatever the evil of the day might be: apartheid, colonialism, racism, human rights violations, crimes against humanity, Israelis are Nazis, and so on. That's mythologizing the Israelis, these categories. So I think at the core of anti-Semitism and the merging of myth and politics, you have the mythical word, the word of truth, the holy word, the scriptural word, whether it's the Vulgate or the Protocols of the Elders of Zion. You have the life of the soul at stake in the blood, the spilling of blood as a means of purification on the path to redemption. These are some examples of the mythical structures, the mythical word, scriptural word that I've touched on today. I just mentioned the Vulgate, the Protocols, the Hamas Charter of Allah. Hamas calls its charter the Charter of Allah. Hamas is Allah. And in that charter, where you see the laying out their political aims, their political aims are deeply tied to a religious mythical structure. And the three main sources that the Hamas charter invokes to demonstrate the truth of their myth are the Quran, the Hadith, the body of the oral tradition written down in Islam, and the protocols of the elders of Zion. This mythical structure, the pernicious demonic rituals of the Jews, is something that plays out repeatedly. Here you have in the upper left, going clockwise, you have an image from the 15th century, Simon of Trent. Then you have on the upper right, an image from Der Stürmer, Nazi propaganda. Lower left, this is from, I believe, an Egyptian news outlet. And on the lower right, this is a dramatization, produced in Syria, of the blood libel. So it continues, and it continues in art. Art is one of the main ways of portraying myth. And this is a painting done in 2020 of a famous blood libel, Simon of Trent, which is from the 15th century. You see it's in the cruciform position. You see the wound in the side of the child, as Jesus had in his side. So this is here and now. This is part of the anti-Zionist politics. Anti-Zionism appropriates, incorporates, and promotes all of the mythical structures I've just laid out, including, blood libel, including the demonization of the Jew, including the association of the Jews, Israel, Jewish state, with everything that's evil. Omar Barghouti, good example. At a lecture given at University of California, Riverside, he claimed that every night Israeli soldiers go hunting for Palestinian children. This is a demonizing blood libel. He also claims that the US is so friendly to Israel because Jews control the American government. Jews are in charge. It's the world Jewish conspiracy here. When it comes to redemption in Christianity, you have there's the promise of redemption rests upon a correct belief. That, and as well as in Islam, you have a similar phenomenon that whoever believes correctly will have a place in paradise. But you'll notice in the political structures where you have totalitarian regimes, National Socialists, Soviet communists, Chinese communists, the correct belief, or at least, saying what is correct, becomes essential to your own legitimacy. And this shows up, I would argue, in the cancel culture, which has its anti-Semitic elements. And the ultimate aim is the elimination of the Jew for the sake of either the salvation of the soul or society or the body politic or the body of believers, however that salvation is understood. So you have this eschatology. Anti-Semitism has its eschatology, its ultimate outcome that is determined by the mythical structure, okay, and implemented by the political power. So, I mean, you can read this, from the Hadith, that the day of judgment won't come until the Jews are eliminated. And notice this: the stones and trees will say, "Oh, Muslims, oh, Abdullah, there's a Jew behind me. Come kill him." Nature itself vomits up the Jew. The Jew is more than just a political enemy. And you have this phenomenon with Hajj Amin al-Husseini, who preached what the priests of the time of the Crusades preached, but with nobody saying, no, it's not true. There is a, redemptive element here. I'll just wrap this up quickly. When Hitler died, he wrote his last political will in which he urged the world to continue the war against international Jewry. And I would argue that those who heed that call most profoundly are the Islamic jihadists. And the chief ideologue of Islamic jihadism, of Muslim Brotherhood, is Sayyid Qutb, who argues in his work, Our Struggle with the Jews, that extermination of the Jews is a religious duty. This is a teaching taken up by Ruhollah Khomeini. Ruhollah Khomeini was a follower of Sayyid Qutb, translated Qutb's works into Farsi, and as we all know, the Israel. So it's when politics and together, it's for the sake of exercising the power to attain the purity that will get you into paradise, that will bring salvation, redemption from the eternal Jew. Thank you.